Okay, so today's healthy conversation is a near and dear one to my heart. It actually was uh, influenced or inspired, I should say, by a consultation I was doing with a mother yesterday for her daughter. And then I did a reel on Instagram about how I was feeling emotional after the conversation. And then many of you wrote me off of Instagram and asked me to talk more about it. So here we are. So essentially, the conversation with the mother sounded something like this. Her daughter her daughter is very young, and I will keep all details really confidential because her daughter is very young. Anyway, all confidential details. But I was talking to the mother. Her daughter's very young. She has been diagnosed with PCOS. She has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. She's extremely insulin resistant. Her lipid panel is off the charts. In other words, her cholesterol is really, really high. Shouldn't be that high for her age. She's having all kinds of trouble with mobility. She has gained a significant amount of weight. And anyways, she got to me because she is desperate to help her daughter. And the thing that really got me upset was she said, I wish I would have helped her years ago, but I had talked to a professional in the disordered eating disorder space who told me not to talk about food and weight with my daughter at all, or I would cause an eating disorder for her. And so I didn't, and here we are. I'm oversimplifying it for the sake of this video, but it absolutely broke my heart because for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have overemphasized the fear in parents of the impact of talking about food and weight and bodies with our kids. There's a lot of people in the industry talking about, don't say anything, you're going to cause an eating disorder. There's this whole thing about causing an eating disorder. So I'm just going to say really quickly that the literature, the research, the data just does not support that while yes, people who struggle with eating disorders have a higher correlation of dieting behaviors, which I think you could say sort of, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Just intuitively, that makes a whole lot of sense that people who are diagnosed with eating disorders have a higher correlation of dieting behaviors, without a doubt. But that does not automatically translate to dieting behaviors cause eating disorders, okay? And it certainly does not translate to parenting tools cause eating disorders, or parent interference causes eating disorders. Now, I'm going to talk about this in just a second about the ways that we talk to our kids do matter. The inferences that we make with our kids do matter, but to just create a blanket statement of don't talk about food and body with your children or you will cause an eating disorder is not only categorically false, but inherently dangerous and incredibly unhelpful to the parent. Okay. So that's where this came from. And then a few of you asked me to talk about it in greater detail, which was, well, how do we talk to our kids about food and bodies? Because quite frankly, it's an issue. It's an issue. Kids weigh significantly more today than they did years ago. That's just the data. It's not inference. It's not judgment. It's just, that's true. Kids, and this is for a number of reasons, but kids are having an increase of diseases that we did not see in children: type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, metabolic dysfunction. PCOS is happening at a considerably higher rate. Hormone issues, autoimmune issues. I mean, these are things that children, did not and do not need to be dealing with. Okay. So in my view, and most of you know this about me, I have a 9-year-old daughter. I have a child that I'm trying to raise in this environment in a healthy way, while also keeping in mind that I want to preserve her mental health and well-being just as much as I want to preserve her physical health and well-being. So how do we do this in a way that is safe and effective for our children? Hands down, blanket statement to tell you all, for anybody who is talking about, well, kids just know how to eat and know when to stop. That might have been true before the industrial era of food and the, emergence of agriculture and processed foods and things. That was probably true. A couple hundred years ago, kids had self-regulating skills to be able to know when we were hungry and stop when we're full. That was true a couple hundred years ago. But in our modern food environment, we have completely negated that ability, not only because of some of our parenting interventions, but mostly because of the processed food industry. So let me just explain this to you. Kids need help. Kids especially need help managing their processed food and sugar intake. They really do. Because kids have, well, there's a number of reasons, but one of the reasons I will highlight today is the unique combination of what's called a higher relative reward value of food, and also more extreme instances of delayed discounting. Okay. Relative reward value of food is this. The way we determine relative reward value of food is essentially how hard are you willing to work for something that you deem desirable. Okay. And the way that they one of the more popular studies they did to test this was that they had adolescents, I think, I don't know the exact age group, but set up at a kind of computer station, and they were playing a computer game. And when they, improved a level or won the game, they got a candy bar, right? So, there's a good reward value for winning the level, right? And what they found was that there was a huge discrepancy in the kids between, and the levels, as you can imagine, got harder as they went along. And, the candy bars, there were more of them as they went along. So the harder you're willing to work, the more candy bars you got, but, you had to work harder. And there was a huge discrepancy in certain kids who had high relative reward value, meaning they were willing to work really hard for those candy bars. And then there's kids who are sort of, they do a level 1 or 2 and they'd say, meh, don't really care about another candy bar, like I'm out of here, right? But kids especially are susceptible to having a high relative reward value of food, meaning they are willing to work harder for the food than adults are, right? So it's almost like, I'm oversimplifying all of this, but it's almost like they grow out of it. As our brains develop, as we develop into adults, we sort of grow out of it. Now, even for adults, we are all on a spectrum of high relative reward value of food. There are many clients that I work with who feel like they're willing to work really, really hard for junk food, processed food, sugary food, that kind of thing. And truly, there's a mechanism in the brain that shows us where we are on that spectrum, on that continuum, right? So kids have a very, very high relative reward value of food. They're willing to work really, really hard for food as a value, okay? They also have high, what's called delay discounting. We more commonly know it as poor impulse control, but delay discounting really means they have a harder ability looking at the value of something that's further down the line than what's right in front of them. One of the most common ways to understand delay discounting is when people are presented with a piece of chocolate cake. You can either eat the chocolate cake right now, the fork's here, the cake's here, or you can say no to the chocolate cake and hopefully lose 10 pounds later. Okay, so that is what's called delay discounting. If you are able to delay the value of what's in front of you right now for the sake of the value of what you will get later, you have, you're skilled at delay discounting. Kids are much more susceptible to only seeing what's right in front of them and not being able to discount, right? Not being able to see the value of what they might get later if they say no to that thing. Again, it's something that as we grow and as we age and as our brains develop, right, that we have more of ability to go, oh, I can spend this $50 on this pair of shoes I want right now, or I can save that $50 because I'm saving for a car. As adults, we sort of grow into that, and it becomes a lot easier for us to say, nope, I don't want that, pair of shoes right now. I'm saving for a car. For kids, this is incredibly difficult. Now, as you can imagine, put together the combination of high relative reward value of food. Like I'm willing to work really, really hard for something that, tastes really, really good to me. And poor delay discounting, right? Meaning if it's right in front of me, I want it. I don't care if I, can save up for later. You put those things together, and how difficult is it for a kid to say no to a candy bar, or say no to a milkshake, or stop at the, 10 goldfish or whatever. Okay. Kids need our help in managing food intake. And those are just two of the reasons. I'm going to talk about one more reason, and then I'm going to talk about how to do it. Okay. Processed food, as we know, processed food begets processed food. Processed food disrupts the natural mechanisms in our brain, which tells us when we've had enough, which tells us when we're satiated. It acts on mechanisms of the brain that tell us we want more of it. It increases our dopamine, which is the motivating factor. The motivating factor tells us that we want more of it. Okay. So processed foods, things that are unnaturally combined in nature, act on mechanisms in our brain in an unnatural way. Kids are highly susceptible to this. Okay. So for these three big reasons, and there are more, y'all, but for these three big reasons, our kids need our help in managing an appropriate food intake when it comes to processed foods. It drives me absolutely insane when people talk about, kids being intuitive eaters. I'm like, listen, it is not intuition when they every single time after dinner, even if they say, yeah, mommy, my tummy's full, they want sugar. That's not intuition. That is sugar. That's the impact that sugar has on a young person's brain. High relative reward value of food, low delay discounting, processed food acting on the mechanisms of the brain. It's not intuitive eating, folks. It's not. So our kids need help with the appropriate intake of food. How do we help them? You can see how passionate I get about this. How do we help them? Okay, so one of the things, let me start with some of the things we don't want to do. We do not want to talk about the food in relation to the child's weight. It's unhelpful. It's unnecessary. Okay. You just heard me talk about those three sort of risk factors. I said nothing about a child's weight, did I? And you still got why, oh, wow, this might be hard for my kid. I said nothing about their weight, right? So we do not need to talk about the food as it pertains to their weight. In other words, saying things like, you don't need a second serving, that might be hard on your waistline, or, oh, I wouldn't eat that, you might gain weight, or having any mention of food as it pertains to the size of their body is unhelpful, nor is it necessary. The way we do talk about food, and if you need more education on how to say things like this, just ask me, right? Like I will help you with that language with the food. But the way we do talk about food is some of the ways that I just described. You know what, honey? And I do this with my daughter. There are some foods that have a different impact on us, and it just makes it harder for us to know when we've really had enough. Have you ever noticed how you can eat your chicken and you can eat your raspberries and you can eat your blueberries and you always kind of know when to stop? But when you have a milkshake from the ice cream store down the street, suddenly you'll drink the whole thing and go, mommy, my tummy hurts. Milkshakes are harder to know when it's time for us to stop. So I'm going to help you with that. I'm going to help you know with certain types of food, sometimes it's harder to know when to stop. I'm going to help you with that. Right? It has nothing to do with her weight. It has nothing to do with her body size, and everything to do with the food itself, and that different foods act differently in our bodies, right? So another way we talk about things is, and we do a lot of balance in our house, but the balance is we talk about the macronutrients and the impact those macronutrients have on our bodies. So if I let my daughter, honestly, my daughter's very healthy. This is what I do for a living. But if I let her, she would eat pasta and only pasta for every single meal for every day of her life. Do I allow her to have pasta? Absolutely. Do we eat pasta regularly for her? Absolutely. And I say, definitely, we can have some pasta tonight. I would also like for you to have some protein. Protein makes you feel full longer, so you're not getting hungrier throughout the day. It helps keep you full. I don't use the word satiated because she doesn't totally know what that means. I mean, my kid does because she has to live with me. But what we talk about is it helps you feel full longer, right? Protein helps your brain work differently. It helps you feel full longer. So yes, you can have a bowl of Panda Puffs in the morning. Can I also get you an egg? Can I also get you some, chicken sausage or whatever it is? Because I want that protein to help you feel full longer. It's also really good for your strong body. You love playing Gaga ball. The thing that gives you enough energy to play Gaga ball is the protein that you eat with your pasta in the morning. So let's add that to it, right? Nothing to do with that's going to make you fat, or you have to eat this for this reason, or this is good for you, or this is bad for you. We talk a lot about the function of the food that it has in our body. This teaches her to be aware of functions of food in the body. Does she eat sugar in our house? All the time. But we don't do sodas. We don't do juices. We talk about the impact of sugar with other things. So my 9-year-old will look on the back of a label and go, oh, Mom, this has 33 grams of sugar. And I will say, great, can we have something else that has something else with it, right? And she knows that to drink a soda that has some ridiculous amount of sugar in it, that's a no in our house. But can she have a cookie or, a small Snickers bar or something like that, because it quite literally has a little less sugar, but it also has some other things in it? She knows that it's not that sugar is bad. It's that there is an impact on all of the things that we eat and what it does in our body. Okay. So my overall statement is this: we don't talk about food as it pertains to, weight and like the impact of your size and body shape. We talk about the foods that are harder to know when we've had enough. So for instance, like if she's eating goldfish or something, we have some rules in the house. We don't mindlessly eat in front of the television, not because you're going to eat too much, it's going to make you fat, but because we say, our bodies, our minds have a really hard time telling us when to stop when we're doing something else. So if we're going to have a snack, we're going to put it in a bowl and we're going to eat it over here. And then when you're done with the snack, you can go watch television. We don't mindlessly eat in front of the television. The exception to that is sometimes when she and I will be sitting on the couch having popcorn. But even then, she knows, like, we'll finish the popcorn because we're watching a movie and mindlessly eating. And that's an exception to that, right? So we portion out food. We know which foods are harder for us to pay attention to. We know which foods that are harder for the body to know when it's had enough and to stop. Okay. So we don't talk about foods as in terms of weight or good or bad food. We talk about food, the impact that it has on your body, and some of the foods that are harder to manage, knowing when to say no to and knowing when you've had enough. That's number one. Number two, body image in kids. Let me just say this, that when kids start to be preoccupied with their body in a way that is negative, and they're saying, I don't like my body, or I'm feeling fat, or I don't, whatever. When kids start to have that language, it is a signal of their self-concept. It's just that their self-concept is coming out as the body. In other words, body image is the vehicle for their negative self-concept to arise. For some kids, it's grades. For some kids, it's perfectionism. For some kids, it's body image. For some kids, sadly, it's drugs and alcohol. The list goes on, okay? Body image is just one example of a poor self-concept. So what we do to heal body image in kids is not to tell them how beautiful their body is, which, we can, but we want to heal the self-concept. Now, again, we're in Healthy Conversations this morning. I've already gone for 20 minutes. This would be a whole nother 2-hour, sort of educational class on how to help kids with body image, which I'll probably do someday because you asked me for it so much. But just know that you're not teaching them how to love their body. You're teaching them how to love themselves, right? How do they learn to trust themselves and how they feel about themselves? How do they learn how to increase their own self-concept? How do they learn how to recognize their skills and talents and the good things about themselves? It's not when we're struggling with negative body image in kids, the healing is not making them feel good about their body. The healing is making them feel good about themselves. Okay. So one of the things that I'm just giving examples from my own life, one of the things that we've done with my daughter all the way through is, while yes, we tell her that she's beautiful and we tell her, all of the things that we love about her, we spent a lot of time, number one, asking her how she feels. Okay. Because when you ask your kids how they feel, it cues them to internally check in with themselves. So from a very young age, when my daughter was teeny tiny and she's always picked out her own clothes, right? And she would wear things that, holy cow, did not match. And she went to school looking ridiculous a few times, right? Doesn't matter. I would say, what do you think, honey? What do you like, honey? She'd say, I like this. And I'd say, great. I love that you like it. And she learned how to decide for herself what she liked, to check in with herself what she liked. And to this day, she's 9 years old and we'll pick out an outfit and she'll come out and she'll go, Dad, what do you think? Mom, what do you think? And the first thing we will say to her is, how do you feel in that outfit? How do you feel about it? And she'll say, I feel amazing. And we say, awesome. And I will say, I love how that jacket has the collar on it, or I love the polka dots on that, whatever. Okay. So reflecting them back to themselves helps teach them to go inward. How do I feel? What do I think? My opinion matters, right? We do this in every area of her life. So things like her art when she brings it home, or, when she finishes her math homework, I will say to her things like, I'm so proud of how you didn't give up on that, even when it was difficult for you. I'm so proud of how you were able to focus, even though I know you wanted to go do something else. Not, good job, honey, you finished your math homework, or not, you're smart. Because again, this is a conversation for another day. But when all we give our children is, you're smart, you're pretty, you're good at soccer, you're a great athlete, those are things that our kids end up feeling self-conscious about, because in their mind, I didn't do anything to be smart. I didn't do anything to be pretty. So like, this is out of my control, right? Strangely enough, that makes them feel more out of control than if we were to compliment them on the things that they do have control over, like your focus, your attention, the amount of effort you put into it, how you didn't give up, the way you spent time meticulously putting that together, the way that you showed kindness to that person, the way that you said something nice to somebody. Those are all things that our kids have control over. And when we compliment them on those things, they feel a stronger internal locus of control. They feel more confident in themselves because they can do that again. They can replicate that again, right? If you are complimenting them on something like, you're beautiful, right? Which, don't get me wrong, we say those things to my daughter as well. Like, so that's scattered in there. It's not like I never say you're beautiful, because I think she is, right? So I can say that to her. But it's that we overemphasize the things in her that she has the ability to change and work with. If you're talking about you're beautiful to somebody, well, number one, what happens if I go through puberty and I look different? Like, well, I don't know, I happen to be beautiful. Am I still going to be beautiful? Internally, it makes them feel unsafe if we're complimenting them on things that they don't have any control over. So one of the ways that we build her self-concept is to compliment her on the things that she does, that she has agency over. You worked really hard on that. You focused really hard on that. You were really kind to that person. You went out of your way and did this thing, right? So these are just a few examples of when I tell you that when we're helping a child heal body image, what we're trying to do is improve their self-concept. We improve a kid's self-concept by teaching them to trust themselves, to know themselves and trust themselves, and go back to the inner wisdom and say, how do you feel in that outfit? Do you like that shirt that you picked out? Do you feel like you tried your hardest today? Was there anything else that you feel like you could have done differently? I'm so proud of you for these character traits that you portrayed today, right? That's how we build self-concept and self-trust. Gosh, y'all, there's so much to talk about here. And I realize that we are, oh gosh, there's a lot of you with questions. Okay. I realize that we are in, healthy conversations, which is a 15-minute moment in time. And this is not a complete training on, how to parent your kids, but I hope that it gave you a few ideas about why we do need to help kids with nutrition, kids especially, and also a few ways to start to build your child's self-concept if that feels important to you. Okay, I feel like we are good. There's no questions over there. We're solid over here. Thanks for joining me today. I will see you all next week. Thanks, everyone.